This video is going to look at the human alimentary canal, and this is part 1 of 2, and this one looks particularly at the teeth and some of the chemical digestion that occurs in the initial stages of the digestive system. So this is the digestive system, so we'll just have a look at the various components of the digestive system. You have the mouth and the salivary glands. This is where food enters the body and where saliva gets mixed with it. You have the esophagus, which is a tube which is surrounded by muscles which squeezes the food down towards the stomach using a process called peristalsis. You have the stomach. In the stomach produces acid as well as a protease, an enzyme that digests protein. Then you have the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, and the stomach feeds into this, and the juices from the pancreas as well as from the gallbladder gets added to it, adding enzymes and bile salts to the mixture. The pancreas produces a variety of digestive enzymes, as we'll see in a second. The liver produces bile, and the bile gets stored in the gallbladder, and the bile is used to emulsify fat, so to break the fat up into smaller droplets. The ileum is the main site of absorption of food, so this is where the food gets absorbed into the bloodstream. The colon is the large intestine, and this is where most of the bacteria live, some vitamins get made, some of the water gets absorbed as well. Then the rectum is where feces is stored before it exits the body. The mouth is where food enters the body, and there's mechanical digestion which occurs here, which happens by the teeth and the tongue, and chemical digestion by the amylase produced in the salivary glands. Amylase digests starch. So let's have a look at the type of teeth. There's three types of teeth. So you have the incisor, you have the canines, and you have the molar and the premolar. The incisor, and let's have a look at how they work on food. So the incisor cuts. So you have two incisors on opposite side. They're the front four at the top and at the bottom. So they cut food into smaller bits. It's for an initial biting. The canine are pointy, so they're next to the incisors, two at the top, two at the bottom. And the canines pierce and tear food. The molars and premolars are the remaining teeth. So you have two. An adult has two premolars, top and bottom, and then three molars behind it, forward once the wisdom teeth come through. The molars grind and break up the food into smaller bits, and it crushes any hard food as well. So let's look at the structure of teeth. So this is a diagram of a premolar. You can recognize it's a molar because it's got the forked roots. So the outer casing of the teeth is called the enamel. It's the white part that you see in your mouth, and it's a bit that protects your teeth, the underlying tissues, from action of bacteria and enzymes. Below this you have the dentine, which is softer and provides the structure of the tooth. Below that you have the pulp cavity, which carries nerves, and so you can sense the pressure of what you're eating, as well as blood vessels to supply the tooth with the nutrients it needs. Then the tooth is attached to the jawbone by a cement. It's not the actual cement, but it does stick the teeth into the jaw. The bit that sticks up above the gum line in pink here is called the crown. The rest of it is called the root. Now let's also think about salivary amylase. So salivary amylase is also produced in the mouth, and it digests starch. Now starch is a long molecule consisting of many different glucose molecules, many hundreds of glucose molecules. And what amylase does, in green here, is it takes the starch and it cuts it into smaller pieces. And these smaller pieces are disaccharides known as maltose. Later on in the small intestine, this maltose gets digested into glucose. After swallowing, the food goes down the esophagus and travels down the esophagus using a process called peristalsis. And in peristalsis, what happens is that the muscles surrounding the esophagus contract behind the bolus of food. So the food's been shaped into this bowl shape by the tongue before you swallow, but it squeezes from behind, and the areas in front of the and on the bolus itself are relaxed, so it can move forward and getting squeezed from behind. This follows kind of a wave-like pattern, and it forces the bolus from your mouth all the way down into your stomach. Now, pepsin is produced in the stomach as is hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid is mainly used to kill bacteria. The pepsin is used to digest protein. So here you have pepsin. Now, pepsin is different to amylase in that it only cuts at certain sites. So remember that a protein is a long chain of amino acids with a particular sequence. It only cuts when two particular amino acids are next to each other. So here we've got it needs a blue one and a red one, and then it cuts. And then it cuts. So you end up with irregular pieces called peptides. These peptides can then get digested by other enzymes in the small intestine into individual amino acids, which get absorbed into the blood. And that's part 1 of this video. Stay tuned for part 2.